Aaron Torres, welcome back to T-Town. I hope you're doing well, sir.
Ryan, every time I hop on the phone with you, I'm doing well, man. It's the best part of my week. How are you doing, bro?
Man, I'm good. I'm just trying to convince these Alabama fans. I mean, don't tell anybody, okay? Because we're a little bit embarrassed of this. We got Alabama fans that are worried about Vanderbilt.
Oh, that's cute. That's cute. I like that. Here's the thing, Ryan, is first of all, what you just said is correct, but it's also what's wrong with college football. And there's not a lot wrong with college football. In the grand scheme, it's not that big of a deal. But you just said Vanderbilt, not a top 15 team, not a top 20 team, not a top 25 team. Well, that tells you everything you need to know about how idiotic these pollsters are, because when the AP poll came out last week, first of all, Vanderbilt is one of the 25 best teams in college football right now. You beat a team that's ranked the week before. And by the way, if we're going to rank teams, why aren't we giving them credit when other teams beat them, such as Vanderbilt beating a top 25 team last week in Kansas State? But at the same time, what has LSU done that warrants a top 25 ranking? What has Florida done, winning a game against Tennessee in which, Butch Jones handed it to them on a platter 25 different ways, 25 different times? So I'm with you. Look, Alabama, even on the road, even CBS Game of the Week, they're not going to lose this game. And, I don't think the fan base, I don't think you need to be, cashing in your 401k and planning for the apocalypse here. Like, Alabama's not losing this game. But Vanderbilt is a good team. They're worthy of a top 25 ranking, independent of the fact that Alabama is going to win this weekend. They deserve to be in the top 25, and shame on the pollsters, for not putting them there this week after, a well-deserved hard-earned victory.
So, Aaron, let me go here because we got a little bone to pick with you, man. You don't have Alabama at that number one spot. In Tuscaloosa, we don't like number 2. We don't like 3. We don't like 4. And you don't have us at that number one spot. Why not?
Yeah, it's what I said. When I do my ranking at the end of every week, it's based on what a team has done on the field so far this season. And so, it's not who the head coach is. It's not where I think a team will be by the end of the year. It's not where they were ranked in the preseason. And look, I think a lot of Alabama fans would sit there and say, look, we were ranked number 1 in the preseason, and until further notice, we shouldn't be there. But if you look at what Clemson has done so far this season, to me, one, they're the defending national champion. So if you're saying, until you get knocked off that perch, you deserve to stay there, then Clemson should have started the year number 1 to begin with. But what they've done in back-to-back weeks is phenomenal. Obviously, I know that little school down the road from you guys, they try so hard, and maybe they're not as good as many of us in the media thought they would be coming into the year. But, Clemson just absolutely put a licking on them 2 weeks ago. And then to go to Louisville this week, and look, I don't think Louisville's that good, but to completely shut down Lamar Jackson, what they've done, they deserve to be number 1 in the polls. Alabama, I would have at number 2, maybe number 3, and they're going to get their chances this week against Vanderbilt and in the future. But right now, I just think whether you're looking at the body of work, how a team is playing, whatever the case may be, I just don't even, I'm not even going to lie here, Ryan. I said it, on Saturday, and I stand by it. I don't even know, unless you're just going to say, I'm not going to move the number 1 team until they lose. I don't know how you could make a case for anyone other than Clemson. As I said, they've got the body of work, and they have looked the part early in the season.
No, I agree with you. And Aaron, this is a debate. I don't know if I'm buying it, but it's at least a debate. Has Clemson taken over that spot as the number 1 college football program? Because you got to think. I mean, look at it. They're right now probably the better team. I don't disagree with you. I'm just aggravating you about the bone to pick with you. I was just having some radio talk. But, I mean, Clemson does look the part right now. They beat Alabama in January. They almost beat them the year prior. If they're not 1, they're 1B right now.
I agree. And, look, I don't think they've surpassed Alabama because, look, at the end of the day, what Coach Saban has done over the past decade, not just in national championships, but in the total body of work, I see, as crazy as it sounds, Ryan, I still don't think he gets enough credit for everything he's done, not just building this juggernaut, but maintaining it. And I've been a fan of college football long before I covered it, and I've seen a team and a program rise and have 2, 3, 4 incredible years, whether it's USC, a decade ago, Miami before that, Urban Meyer's Florida Gators, whatever. But to maintain it for 7, 8, 9, 10 years now, dating, I guess it's about 8 since that first national championship in 2009, is incredible. And I think Dabo Swinney's on his way. But what I will say is this, is that he has built a sustainable program. So many people have said, well, it was because of Deshaun Watson. And Deshaun Watson certainly helped, in the same way that, so many, superstar caliber players, Jameis Winston, at Florida State helped. But, the thing is that this is a program now with 6 straight 10-win seasons coming into this year, 3 ACC titles over that stretch. And I don't think they've caught Bama yet, but I'm with you. I think right behind Bama, they're there. And I give Dabo Swinney credit because so many people, as I just said, they said, oh, this was Deshaun Watson and da-da-da-da. They haven't missed a beat, man. And I don't know how much you guys have gotten to watch because obviously that Clemson game was going on at the same time as your guys' game against Colorado State this weekend. But, that Clemson team, that defense, size, speed, athleticism, the wide receivers that they've put out through the years. This isn't a one-player team. This is, as you said, Ryan, a complete program from top to bottom, top-notch coaching, top-notch facilities, players, recruiting, and the players coming into the program and developing and getting better. I love what Dabo Swinney is doing. I'm not ready to put him quite on that Nick Saban pedestal, but by the way, I have no problem putting him right next to Urban Meyer and all the other great coaches in this sport, Jimbo Fisher as well.
Well, you just look at the culture that he's created. I mean, because the one thing that I watch, Aaron, and I watched it out in Arizona, and I watched it down in Tampa, that Clemson is not intimidated by that Alabama brand. Notre Dame was intimidated by that Alabama brand when they got off the bus. Clemson's like, hey, man, I want him to fight. Sign me up. And that's something that I watched them. They're not intimidated by that crimson and white jersey. A lot of other teams are.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's a great point, Ryan. And, I was at that Ohio State game. I wasn't at either national championship game, but I was at the Ohio State game in Phoenix. And, they walked onto the field and that stadium was probably about 80% Ohio State fans because I think every Clemson fan in America was saving their money to go to the national championship game in Tampa. But, physically they dominated, emotionally they dominated. And then, by the way, when they won that game, they jogged back to the locker room and were ready to go for Bama. And look, and I've said this all along, right, and I really believe this. I think because Dabo Swinney is the anti-football coach, he just doesn't get enough credit. And what I mean by anti-football coach is this. After that game against Ohio State, I asked him about the development of his program in the post-game press conference, and he gave me about a 3-minute answer, taking me step by step, moment by moment. This is while all these other reporters are on deadline waiting to get their questions in. And, it wasn't the coach speak. It wasn't the rhetoric. It was the hat was off on the table, and he let loose. He was one guy talking to, a group of reporters and spitting his heart out. And he wasn't, rough around the edges like Coach Saban or Urban Meyer or Jim Harbaugh. And so I think because he doesn't have that demeanor of the coach, he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. But we've just been talking about this for 5-10 minutes now. He has built an incredible program. As you said, Ryan, a fearless program. And who knows? I mean, I would have never imagined this, even 3-4 weeks ago. But would it surprise anybody at this point if we got Bama Clemson Part 3 this January? Because it wouldn't surprise me, I'll tell you that much.
No, and you got to go back and look at and give Alabama credit. They knocked Florida State around and really knocked down some of those barriers that we thought Clemson might have a challenge up against DeAndre Francois. Alabama's able to knock him out, and now – it almost sort of made Clemson because I don't even know if I see, we tried to make Louisville there last week, but I don't really see a lot of hiccup games for the Clemson Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern is as a young team, especially offensively, maybe they have that letdown. I mean, they have to go to Virginia Tech in a few weeks, but Virginia Tech's a really young team too. But you just never know. But no, I'm with you, man, and you're right. You know, if we do get Clemson, Alabama Part 3, or if they're 2 of the 4 playoff participants, you know, Dabo Swinney should write a thank you letter to Nick Saban and that Alabama defense. And obviously, you know, both you and I are tongue in cheek. You never want to see a player go down.
No, right.
Yeah. But and I think we obviously we agree on that. And that's obvious. But like, you know, like that opened the door, because I'm telling you, man, I think, you know, as I look back on it, I still say, I said it on the Tuesday I came on the week after with you, Ryan, is that I looked at that Florida State team, personnel-wise, they were flying all over the field. Derwin James, all those guys on defense, they got some football players down there, man. And so to me, you know, I still really believe that had they had a healthy DeAndre Francois, they're right in the conversation with Clemson and Oklahoma and Alabama going forward to potentially get back to the playoffs and maybe meet even Alabama again. But with a true freshman at quarterback, man, that's the reality of this sport. You know, one injury can impact a lot of things. And so right now, I think the window is open for Clemson to again win their division, win their conference, and get back to the playoffs, and we'll see from there.
Aaron, back in January, you and I began a conversation, and we talked about the SEC being down. It took us 6 months, but we have a lot of other people now riding the Aaron Torres and Ryan Fowler bus.
Oh, my God.
I mean,
everywhere.
coaches in the SEC. We screamed about it in January, but everybody else was not paying attention. You and I are talking about the quality of coaches. 3 weeks in, we were all over that. I hate to sort of pat ourselves on the back, but this SEC league, it's bad.
Well, here's the thing, Ryan, and you know this because you've covered this sport, you know, for as long as you have, is when you have a season like this year where, you know, the SEC potentially has, you know, in this case, 4 coaches, but whether it's 2, 3, 4 coaches, whatever, you know, every year, like, at least one of those guys kind of rises up and kind of quiets those rumors. You know, even last year, you know, Kevin Sumlin, they start off whatever it was, 7-1 before they fall apart down the stretch. You know, Gus Malzahn got Auburn to the Sugar Bowl, although we know that path wasn't pretty to get there. But usually, at least, like, when you have 3, 4 coaches on the hot seat, at least 1 or 2 of them coach themselves off of it and show some sign of life. Well, this year, not only are guys not coaching themselves off of it, but guys are coaching themselves on it. So Butch Jones is a train wreck. We you know, you and I could have been calling that for years. You know, just complete, you know, like I said, handed Florida that win on a platter 10 different ways. You know, Kevin Sumlin, you know, coached himself out of the job that night at the Rose Bowl, which, by the way, great game that we're now learning means absolutely nothing because UCLA can't play defense either. Arkansas is a mess. Auburn's a mess. And, oh, by the way, Barry Odom saying, hey, don't forget about me over here at Missouri, guys. Let's not forget about me. I know it's only my second year here, but I'm taking this really good program, and I am driving it right off the side of a cliff. You add him into the mix. I'm still not sold on Jim McElwain. Now, look, he's not going to lose his job, but I think we can all agree at this point he's just not the guy. I mean, they should be 0-2 right now. And you know, look, is that program ever going to crater and go 3-9 under him? I don't think so. But is he Urban Meyer, Steve Spurrier? I think we can all agree no on that as well. So it's a crazy year for the SEC, man, because I really thought at least one of these coaches, if not 2 or 3, would be able to coach themselves out of this. And, you know, unless Gus Malzahn figures out what's going on with that offense, I don't think it's unrealistic to think that 4, and in a worst-case scenario, in a crazy scenario, maybe 5 coaching jobs in this league. And that doesn't even include Ole Miss, by the way. I completely forgot about Ole Miss. I mean, that can't be right. 6 coaches in this conference, even 5. That's absolutely bonkers if you include Ole Miss.
Yeah, and Chris Lowe, let me give a shout-out to him because he put out a tweet yesterday, and Chris is a great reporter. I love his work. He put out a tweet, and I want to go back and find it to make sure I'm correctly here. He talks about since Nick Saban arrived here, there's been since Saban arrived here in Alabama in 2007, the other 11 schools, now I guess he's not counting the expansion, were in the SEC at that point, have went through 34 different head coaches. That number even sounds crazy. That's crazy. I mean, that's why they're not any good, because they're not. And athletic directors are in a pickle. They either have to make a decision to fire the guy, or they just have to sit there and wait the Saban out.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, you know, it's an impossible thing because you try to wait out Saban, you know, if they're not going to fire your coach, you know who else is going to lose their job? You. And so it is a weird situation. And, you know, obviously, look, some of these things are out of, you know, the control of other people. You know, Urban Meyer having health problems and Bobby Petrino riding his motorcycle into a ditch. Like, these are things that are out of their control. But it's crazy because, again, we've used the word, but paranoia. You know, my buddy Clay Travis, I thought, brought up a great point today, which I hadn't really thought about in a while. I mean, it's obviously fact, but, you know, Phil Fulmer years ago was fired at Tennessee. He had made the SEC championship game the year before. And so why do I bring it up? It's because, you know, you look at somebody like Butch Jones and you say, well, you know, yeah, but look at where he started. It's like, yeah, but that SEC championship or the SEC East was was there for the taking last year, and you couldn't do it. So at a certain point, it becomes, you know, are Tennessee fans going to be accepting of the fact that, you know, every year every game is going to be a dogfight. You're never going to be able to just beat anybody, you know, and you know, are you going to accept what Butch Jones has kind of given you? Kevin Sumlin, it's kind of the same deal. The program is peaked. Brett Bielema, look, I know he started from the bottom and he did a good job getting that program to a certain level, but, you know, is Brett Bielema going to take Arkansas any further than they've been at 7-5, 8-4, excuse me? I mean, this is year number, you know, 6 or 5 or whatever it is. And so it is an interesting dilemma. Like, obviously all of these guys aren't going to be let go. And obviously I think that A&M Arkansas game this weekend is going to have a big, you know, stake in how things play out the rest of the year. But it is crazy, man, because like I said, usually one of these guys coaches themselves off of that hot seat. And this year it just seems like, you know, they can't, all these coaches, all of them just can't get out of their own way.
And you have written an article, I've only got about 45 seconds here, KentuckySportsRadio.com, an 8-step guide for Kentucky winning the SEC East. It's not as crazy as you think. Pretty good plan here for the Kentucky Wildcats. It starts Saturday against Florida, I believe. Is it, or is it 2 weeks?
Oh no, they play Florida this weekend.
That's right.
But yeah, it's the I was going to say it's the principle of, you know, by the time they get Tennessee, you know, Butch Jones could be legitimately fired because the schedule is that tough. They play Ole Miss, all that stuff. So I'll have good stuff coming out throughout the week. You can follow me on Twitter at Aaron_Torres. And it was a pleasure, Ryan. I always appreciate you having me, man.